Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying. It is Monday. Oh, Thierry. What an absolute heartbreaker. I'm sure you will have all seen by now that the end of Rally Croatia was every bit as dramatic as the beginning. Thierry Neuville crashed on the power stage, went from having a lead of more than a minute into the misery of retirement. It was brutal, wasn't it? You know, it was a minor moment on the exit of a right-hander that sent him wide and off the road, right at the point when there was a concrete block in the verge. He went over that concrete block, tore the front right wheel off his i20N Rally 1. He tried to continue, managed to get to the end of the stage, crawling through, but retired the car. There was too much damage. He pulled over just at the finish and had to botch things back together. But that was it. Some will say that it was a silly mistake, you know, and that he was pushing too hard. I get it, I understand that, but I'm not sure that I can be that hard on him, to be honest. You know, he is not the first driver to make a mistake and crash on the power stage. He will not be the last. You know, conditions were tricky all weekend. There's lots of gravel and dirt getting pulled onto the road, and unfortunately sometimes these things do just happen. I think what's sad for Neuville is that for the first time in what felt like forever, he actually seemed quite positive. You know, the team know that the i20 is not on the level that it needs to be at, but, you know, he seemed positive about the direction they were going. He was positive about his feeling in the car. And, you know, to have that morale-boosting victory ripped out of his grasp at the last moment is a massive, massive kick for him and for the rest of the team. So it was, you know, it was brutal. So whatever you say, you know, whether you say it was a mistake and he shouldn't have made the mistake, I mean, you have to feel for him a bit. That is, what a way to lose the rally. Of course, for every loser, there is a winner, and that winner was Takamoto Katsuta. That made it 2 in a row for the Toyota man, who must feel like wins something like buses. You wait ages for one to come along and then 2 show up at once. It was not an easy weekend for Katsuta by any means. This was obviously an extremely difficult rally for almost everyone, really. He had a puncture on Saturday afternoon on the infamous stage 14. A couple of points, I think, on Katsuta's victory for me. Firstly, a lot of people will say that he was lucky, you know, that he fell into it, and I understand that, and you could say the same about Safari, but that's the game. That's how it works, you know. Sometimes motorsport is about being in the right place at the right time. You know, he only set one fastest time across the weekend, but he had 6, I think, second fastest times. And, you know, for me, that demonstrates that he was there. He was there or thereabouts. He was consistent across the weekend. And while others threw their cars off the road, he didn't. You know, yes, he had a setback with a puncture, but he kept going, kept plugging away. He made sure he was in a position to capitalise when things went wrong for others. And for me, sometimes that's how you do it. You know, that's how it plays out. And I think you could argue that is a decent tactic. You know, you put yourself in a position to be able to win an event, and he was suitably rewarded, you know, not just with the rally win, but with a 7-point lead in the championship over Elfyn Evans. I think what impressed me more than anything, however, was his attitude at the finish. So he found out about Neuville while he was being interviewed by Molly Pettit at the end of the final stage, and while she kept pushing him, saying, look, you've won this rally, all he wanted to do was say how sorry he was for Thierry Neuville and how bad he felt that Neuville had gone off. And I think, you know, whatever you think of Taka's ability as a driver, all that says to me is, you know, he is the nicest, most humble guy in the WRC. You know, for him to be like, no, I'm not interested in me. I'm just sorry for Thierry. that, you know, that I think that is the mark of the man, isn't it? I think that was so good to see, you know, so humble, so gracious, even though, you know, things had been thrown into his lap. So I love to see that. I think what is going to be really interesting going forward is how he uses this psychological boost, you know, of 2 wins in a row over the next few rallies. You know, we've got another tarmac round next, Canary Islands, Portugal after that, and then his home rally, Japan, is not far away, an event where he's gone well in the past. I think this is a great opportunity for Katsuta to demonstrate that he's taken a significant step forward. And, you know, I don't think we're looking at a future champion in Katsuta. I don't think he's on the same level as your Rovanperas and your Solbergs and your Evans and those guys. That said, you know, this is a really good opportunity, as I said, and, you know, maybe he will kick on and maybe he will mount a championship charge. We just do not know. I have to say, though, I would love to see it. You know, I would love to see him upping his game, competing regularly at the top level. I think that would be fantastic for him, fantastic for the Japanese fans, and fantastic for the sport, because, like I said, he is such a great character. Moving on to the rest of the field, though, Sammy Pajari finished second after what was a pretty strong weekend for him. He led the rally at the end of Friday. He set some fastest times on Saturday. Obviously a puncture on stage 14, same as Katsuta, took his chances of victory, but I think he can take a lot away from this weekend. You know, I think the speed was good. He looked comfortable while he was leading the rally up until that point, and I think, you know, he is more and more starting to look like a really complete driver. He now had a tricky start to the year, but I think since then, you know, he's put together some good performances, and I think he's looking better and better. Of course, though, we can't talk about Pajari or Katsuta without talking about what helped them on their quest to the top steps of the podium, and that was the early demise of their teammates. I predicted, I'm sure many others predicted, a big battle between Elfyn Evans and Oliver Solberg, and we kind of got that, but it wasn't in the way that we wanted. Solberg obviously got it wrong almost immediately, crashing on the first stage. He said that, you know, it was a lack of experience on the hard tyre and perhaps an over-eagerness to push. And, you know, I think it's good. You know, he recognised his mistake. And, you know, Solberg clearly has speed by the absolute bucket load, doesn't he? And he showed that. He won 10 out of 12 stages, I think it was, across Saturday and Sunday. But he also showed that there is still some learning to do. And, you know, he owned up and said, you know, I made a mistake. I was perhaps pushing a little bit too hard, and that's something that I need to work on. And to me, that's okay. You know, that is okay. He's got plenty of time to learn. His pace, I think, is such that Toyota are going to give him the space, as they should. And I think they will give him the tools and the support to keep on growing. Top points for Super Sunday in the power stage obviously mean he did at least take a little bit of a nibble out of Elfyn Evans in the championship standings. And I think that is where the Welshman will and should be disappointed. You know, he and Solberg were a cut above everyone else this weekend. You know, Evans was fastest on the opening 2 stages, and when Solberg went out, you know, I think he would have easily gone on to win the rally. I think he was that comfortable. The problem is that he obviously then went off on stage 3, meaning he lost the chance to pull out a big advantage on Solberg. He did manage to limit the damage. You know, he finished second on Super Sunday, second on the power stage. He and Solberg were in a big battle across Saturday and Sunday. And, you know, that's good, but it's hard not to see it as a missed opportunity for me, you know, especially when you consider Solberg's pace. You know, Solberg was quicker than Evans across the weekend for the stages they were running. You know, his tarmac pace is every bit as good, it seems, and that is a problem, isn't it? You know, I think Evans probably would have hoped that on tarmac he would have had the advantage. It looks like Solberg is just as fast, and, you know, that is going to be a tricky one, isn't it? So I think one thing is for sure is that the battle next time out on Islas Canarias is going to be absolutely sensational. These two on tarmac going at it are wow. Like I said, they were a cut above everyone in terms of pace. Another thing that is certain, it seems, is drivers complaining that things are too hard. So I don't want to get too much into this. Obviously, punctures played a massive role across the weekend. We had 3 Rally 1 cars got to the end and completed all of the mileage and finished in the scored points in the overall standings. Several drivers were expressing their displeasure at various points about the amount of stones and rocks being pulled out onto the road and the liberties being taken by some with cuts. Stage 14 is where it all went a bit mad. 6 Rally 1 cars, I think, got punctures on that one stage alone. I would love to know what you guys think about this and whether you think their comments were reasonable. Honestly, I'm struggling to feel too much sympathy. Oliver Solberg talked about safety issues of cars approaching corners at 200 kilometers an hour when there's gravel on the road. Others were talking about how anti-cut devices should have been used. I've said this before, I will say it again. You do not have to approach a corner at 200 kilometers an hour. You do not have to make big cuts. Rallying is about more than just going as fast as possible for every kilometre of every stage. I think it feels like the organisers in a way can't win. Drivers complain at times about anti-cut devices. Now, at this rally, some of them are saying that there should have been more anti-cut devices. And I think that says it all, doesn't it? I think when it comes to drivers, we have to be a little bit careful because they will complain about the things that don't suit them in a given moment, And I mean, you can't expect them to do anything other than that because self-interest is part of their job, isn't it? But I didn't see any problems with those roads. They were interesting, challenging, technical. And rallying is about driving to the conditions in front of you. It's not just about pace notes. It's not just about gravel note crews and going bat out of hell for leather for the entire rally. It is about driving to the conditions. And if the conditions were bad, slow down, don't take such massive cuts. You're choosing to take that risk. And if you get a puncture, you chose, you could have slowed down. You could have, during recce, you could have said, look, this is a place where there could be extra gravel on the road, where stones could get pulled out. You know the game. Drivers are going to cut the corners, so I don't know. For me, I don't have too much sympathy. Let me know what you think in the comments, though, about that one. That aside, though, let's just quickly finish up with Hyundai. Hayden Paddon finished 3rd on his return after a 2-event break. He did exactly what he was paid to do, didn't he? Kept the I-20 on the road, kept it on the straight and narrow, brought home some points as his teammates faltered. That was that. Good job from Paddon, did what he needed to do. Obviously, we would love to see him going fast and trying to win rallies, but that is not his job. Adrian Formeau, it was another frustrating one, wasn't it? He had a puncture on stage 2, so started the weekend on the back foot and then ruined it completely by hitting a telegraph pole on Saturday, broke his rear suspension and retired for the day. Finished 4th on Super Sunday, which was about as good as it got, so really it was another weekend to forget, wasn't it? It was not, however, a weekend to forget for John Armstrong. Yes, there was a puncture on stage 2. Yes, he ran wide and hit a curb on stage 4, I think it was, broke his suspension, meaning it wasn't a good overall result. But I have to say, the pace from Armstrong was genuinely very, very good. On just his 4th outing in a Rally 1 car, he came within 0.1 seconds of a maiden fastest time. I think there were another 2 second fastest times, and I don't think he was actually ever slower than 4th fastest on the stages that he completed. 3rd fastest on the power stage, 3rd on Super Sunday points. I mean, this was always likely to be a rally that suited Armstrong. He won the WRC Croatia rally last year, but I have to say the speed was good. For me, I think he did a good job in terms of performance. Yes, there were some self-inflicted incidents, but as they say, it is much easier to teach a fast driver to be more consistent than to teach a consistent driver to be fast. And I think Armstrong, there were some issues, but he is on a good path right now. And when you compare his weekend to that of the ailing Josh McAleen, who endured another punishing rally, you have to say that Armstrong is the king of the M Sport camp so far this season. Let's wrap things up with WRC 2, though. Johan Rossell gave Lancia its first WRC 2 win. We haven't seen them for a while, have we, since Monte Carlo? but they are back, and it was a fine weekend for the Italian manufacturer. Rossell incredibly was fourth overall, as I said earlier. Only 3 Rally 1 cars scored points in the overall standings, and Rossell was fourth in a Rally 2 car, and you know, it was a dominant performance for him and for the Ypsilon HF Integrale, which is still a really cool thing to say. I think Rossell won 6 stages. Nikolai Gryzin, his teammate, he won 7 stages, I think it was. So it was a very fine performance from that car. Gryzin only finished third, though he had a mechanical issue. I think a boost hose or something came off on Saturday. That slowed him down a bit. It was a good weekend for the Rossell family, though. Johann's brother, Leo, he was second, so he was showing that there's plenty of life left in the Citroen C3 Rally 2. Taylor Gill, I just want to give a quick mention to him. I talked about him in the preview because he trailered his Yaris Rally 2 all the way from Finland himself. He scored his first stage win in WRC 2, but only finished 8th overall, I think it was, in the WRC 2 standings. A couple of issues, including a puncture and a spin. Romit Jurgensen, he also set a couple of top times, so I wanted to mention him because it proves, you know, he is proving that the Fiesta is once again a force in Rally 2, so that's nice to see a bit more competitiveness there. Punctures, though, ruined his weekend in terms of the overall result. But that is it. I am going to stop talking. That was Rally Croatia, which turned out to be an absolute thriller. I thought it was a fantastic event. I know there was some controversy with punctures, but I don't care because I like drama, and I thought the roads looked brilliant, the drama was brilliant, the speed was brilliant. I have no criticisms of the rally. I will ask you some questions, though. Are you pleased that Katsuta got his second win? Do you think he deserved it? Are you as gutted as Thierry Neuville must be feeling that he went off the road and lost victory? Or do you think it was all too difficult? We need to get rid of all that mean and nasty gravel and just make it as easy as possible for people to go as fast as they want all the time. Do let me know in the comments below what you think. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons while you're there. All that remains for me to say is thank you for watching if you got this far, and I will see you again next time.